my ego wants to be like, Blaine is fine. Like, like wants to just like, even if I'm churning, not to admit to people. And so I was conscious when I was saying, because I think I even texted you one night, like I was in bed and I was like, I'm scared or or like I'm worried or, something. Because I was laying in bed and I was. And
welcome to the world of energy, where science meets spirit. Ancient wisdom merges with cutting-edge knowledge, and the possibilities for a healthier, happier you are endless.
So I think it was in some ways growth for me to like expose, like I am watching the news. I am nervous. I am spinning a little bit. I am watching myself doing it.
Hi, everybody. Lauren here with Blaine writing co-pilot, and we're really excited. Maybe that's not quite the right word. We have a really important conversation that we want to have today and invite you all to really join in with us in some capacity, because we're talking about really difficult, challenging situations and how we get through them. And specifically, we're talking about the two hurricanes that just hit back to back in Florida. We know we have a lot of listeners that are in the Florida area, and we have a lot of listeners that are not in the Florida area that have been really watching to see what's going on there. And it's really intense, the build up to something like that, to the storm. We know it's coming, and you're getting all of these directives of what you should do if you live in the area. And then everyone's watching the storm as it comes, and then what destruction does it entail, and then when it leaves, and then still the flooding that comes after. There's a whole span of time that this takes. And then, of course, those of you who are living in that area need to then go back and find what has occurred and then take the next steps of what you're going to do to mitigate that. So I'm kind of laying this all out because Blaine lives down in Florida for half the year, and she's about to go down there right now. And so Blaine and I have been really talking closely and monitoring the situation pre and post these two hurricanes. And we really shared so much good and powerful and important stuff that we wanted to share that with you. So Blaine, welcome, and let's talk about how you have been feeling, being, doing through this super challenging time.
Yeah, thanks, Lauren. And you're right. We thank you for helping me through this. It's a long, dark waiting game. Just for purposes of contrast, I grew up in the state of Oklahoma and have been through many tornadoes. And the tornado comes fast. You don't get days notice, and then like you're waiting and you have time to move and get on airplanes and go to another state. And, you get 10 minutes notice or whatever it is. Whereas the hurricane it's kind of a big waiting game, especially once you evacuate to even hear anything. So it's a very long, the minutes tick by sort of thing where you sit with your emotions and you sit in the unknown. I also want to say before I forget, the first of the two hurricanes actually were more damaging, like in North Carolina, than even in Florida. So they were, coming to Florida, and they were Florida-bound hurricanes, but then it took that hook up. And I just don't want you, if you're not in Florida and have suffered a lot right now, to not acknowledge.
Thank you.
That happened also.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, because North Carolina really did get sideswiped in a way that a lot of people considered where they had lived in North Carolina to be safe from all kinds of disasters like that, and were really doubly taken by surprise because of that.
Yeah. It's heartbreaking. And I think significantly more loss of life from that area and that first hurricane from the second one. I'll start by saying I maybe have never been so happy that I'm a yogi as I have been going through this, maybe with the possible exception of COVID and owning a yoga studio during COVID and the government shutting it down, and trying, like, I was also happy that I had energy medicine skills and yoga skills and have studied yoga philosophy skills, because I think it's easy to get yanked around by your emotions. And not that yogis are immune to being yanked around by their emotions, but there's a term in yoga, it's svadhyaya, which means self-study. And part of that is stepping outside yourself a little bit and watching yourself going through your emotions, watching yourself reacting to your emotions, watching yourself remember your tools or not remember the tools, or, whatever it is that you're doing when you are in the heat of something that's really difficult. And also, the other thing I really tried to stay cognizant of, because it's something that I teach. And as a teacher of yoga, it is important to me that I practice what I preach. And so that's one of the things I was trying to witness. Am I practicing what I preach when I'm going through hard times? Because people come to me when they're going through hard times seeking my advice. And so it was like a litmus test. Is what I teach, practical? Can I do it? It was like the two Blaines, right? The Blaine who's in the middle of it and the Blaine who's watching the other Blaine and seeing how she's doing. And one of the things that I teach is, and this is metal element, and we'll talk about the metal element quite a bit, I think, in this episode, because that is the balancing emotion is letting go. And so watching my attachment and my ability to let go was something that I was trying to pay attention to. And man, I felt a lot of attachment, a lot of it. But to go back to my previous point, can you be in the middle of something really, really hard and at the same time have the greater vision that something good will come of it? Can you be in both places at the same time? And so I was trying to do that, straddling without, bypassing or skipping my emotions or anything like that. Could I feel the depths of my feeling, but also have the faith that whatever was on the other side was going to be okay? And if the universe wants me to let go of something right now, can I do it in trust that what comes after that could be even better?
That's amazing that you said that, Blaine. I don't think I've heard you say, and I wrote that down, something good will come of it. That's a step beyond just saying it's going to all be okay. Because okay could mean that, like, it's just going to be neutral, the house won't blow away or something like that. But you're saying that something good will come out of this potentially really destructive event that's going on. Can you, do you have any examples of what, or has that already occurred for you? Have you already noticed something good happening since this event?
I'm really thinking me, to be honest, when I say that. And so I think, of course, when there are disasters, there is the good of people stepping out and helping, right? And, all of that. And I've had many people reach out to me proactively, Blaine, I will come to Florida and help you rebuild. I will, so yes, there is that stuff. But I really meant that when I say I was attached, I love to go to Florida in the winter. I love not experiencing winter, but I also particularly love our area. It is paradise. And I love, and when I was sitting in the unknown, I thought about, what am I really going to miss, right? If my home is a total loss, we have an uninsurable property due to its proximity to the Gulf of Mexico. So if our house was completely demolished, we were not going to rebuild. We made that decision, while the storm was coming in. Why would you? Because there will probably be another one on the back, given the state of the environment right now. And so, and it was not looking positive. And it wasn't. Actually, the little town I'm in had the highest storm surge and the highest wind gust of the entire Hurricane Milton. And so it wasn't looking good. And so that's what I was trying to think of. If that part of my life being taken away from me, I mean, I not only love going there, I love looking forward to going there. And I have friends in Colorado, and it's not to diss Colorado because I come from a place of privilege that I actually can be in Colorado part of the year and I can be in Florida part of the year. And I love that about my life. And even from a work perspective, this started a few years ago. I sit in Florida in January and February. I get a ton of work done. I sit and look at the water and brainstorm for the year, plan the whole year. There's just so much that I do. I love my runs down there in the winter. It's beautiful in Florida. I love my bikes. I love my kayaks. There's just so much I love about it. And so the reality was that could all be taken away. We may not, we had bought our tickets to go down for the season, weeks before either of these hurricanes came. And so that's what I meant. Like if that part of my life is taken away from me and I have to be in Colorado 12 months a year or can I believe that something even better could be there for me? And so that's kind of specifically what I meant. I very, very narrowly focused to me and my problems there.
No, that totally makes a lot of sense. And I want to say, I think this is the issue with these kind of situations because you have to be narrowly focused on yourself, right? Like like you said, you have a house that is uninsured. That's a significant financial loss if you lose that. And just all of the pieces that go in your life, right? Especially if you had been in Florida at that exact time, right? And you did. You had your sister-in-law actually left and came to Colorado to stay with you so that she was safe and out of that. So you have to, at some level, definitely think about yourself. And this is one of the yogic tenets as well. Like you are the drop of water. That's you. Just you. And then you are the ocean, which is you and your community in Florida, and then in the whole state of Florida, and then in the whole country. And so I remember very specifically you saying, a few degrees difference with wind speed or water temperature, one or the other, and it goes a little bit south and it misses us all together. And you had this huge that would be amazing. And then right at the next second you said, except then that means it would be worse for somebody else that's living down where that would go. And so this very delicate dance between wanting to be safe and okay in yourself, but also wanting everybody to be safe and okay. And it's not like you could make the storm move that 1 mile or 10 miles or 20 miles difference, but just having that thought and that awareness is just as powerful, I think, because you're really taking into consideration your interconnection with everyone. And so even if you are not hit personally, you are hit. And I think that might be a piece that's missing from the conversations about the kind of global upheaval from these natural disasters is, oh, thank heavens it's over there because I'm not over there. But you are over there too. You are over there too. And you had that wisdom even in that moment when I'm going to be honest too, and I hope this is okay, Blaine. I'm outing you a little bit. I've never seen you as attached, might not be the right word, but I'm going to use it for lack of a better word, as attached as I did during that time when and spinning. Like you are what I consider, you are a very graceful in the moment and metal element. So you're not really thrown to and fro by your emotions. Versus me, I mean, you know me, I'm all over the place with my emotions constantly. And my work is to kind of gather that information and stay in check. But you are already in check. And this is the first time that I saw you spinning out a little bit like what's going to happen. And you're watching the news cycles and this, and if this happens, then that. And you kind of catastrophize versus in every other situation I've seen you in, even with some big issues, you're like, let's just see what happens. And this is the first time I saw you not in that Zen, let's just see what happens, but really on the little hamster wheel with everybody else. Oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. So I'm curious how that felt inside of you, who's so calm, to have that and like that witness, you watched that, and you were being that. Like that seemed like a
Mm-hmm.
very complex situation emotionally for you to sit in.
Right. It's funny because I think I said just a few minutes ago, like, wow, you can be yanked around by your emotions and wow, how terrible must that be? But really, sometimes watching yourself is terrible too. So, or being aware, being so aware of what is happening. And it felt vulnerable. And I will say, I intentionally outed myself because my ego, when I am scared or I am sad or I am struggling, I feel like I might cry a little bit. My ego wants to be like Blaine is fine. Like, like wants to just like, even if I'm churning, not to admit to people. And so I was conscious when I was saying, because I think I even texted you one night, like I was in bed and I was like, I'm scared or or like I'm worried or, something. Because I was laying in bed and I was. And so I think it was in some ways growth for me to like expose, like I am watching the news. I am nervous. I am spinning a little bit. I am watching myself doing it. I am like bringing my tools in um, and not try to just like put up the show um, for everybody else because it's especially, having Heather with us, my partner, Burke's sister. And then, his other sister has a house down there too. And so, there's definitely kind of a lot of family stuff down there. So it wasn't just like our place; it was also Holly's place, and it was Heather's place. So that kind of made the spin a little bit greater. And so I did tell people, like I called friends and was like, "Wow, this is like kind of freaking me out, and I don't know what to do." And I mean, I had one night that I didn't sleep. We've talked about my sleep. My sleep is really good and solid, but there was one night that it was really quite disrupted, and then the next night a little bit disrupted. So I felt like I'm a little extra tired, while I'm also in the churn of all of these emotions. And so, yeah, I definitely was spinning for sure. I don't think like wildly, but more than I usually am.
So I want to kind of unpack that a little bit more because you said something good will come of it. And for me, I want to believe and I want to put it out to you if this might be one of those things, because we talked about this before. And again, we'll get more over the months and years about the different elements. But the metal element, which you are primarily, is very balanced and calm and sort of grounded, right? That's one of the hallmarks of the metal element and the ability to let go. But one of the also challenges is that you might let go too soon. So you don't actually really feel the depth of things before you're like, well, it's all okay. It's for a reason. I understand that I don't know the reason, but it's all okay. It's for a reason and I'm letting it go and I'm fine. Right. And so, and then on the flip side, myself, who is a water wood, who is much more emotional and kind of all over the place with my emotions. And that has also been a source of a lot of the creativity in my life, and a lot of the things that I've achieved have come out of the depths of some of those emotions. But we've looked at each other like, I'm looking at you, I'm like, oh, she's so calm and, grounded. That's way better to me. And you're looking at me saying, it'd be interesting to be able to have some of those depths of experiences that I don't normally have. And so here you had that depth, and you copped to it, you acknowledged it, you allowed yourself to be with it instead of just overriding it. And I know it felt uncomfortable for you, but I wonder if also there was some gold in there. Can you talk about that? If there was some value that you felt, not even just like, oh, now I know how super emotional people feel, but some intrinsic value that you gleaned for yourself from that.
Let me think about this for a minute. I'll say that I watch other people who are, friends of mine who are going through a thing and who just so easily pick up the phone. And I actually I won't share because a very close personal thing just happened to a friend of mine who called me 20 minutes before I met with you, Lauren. And she's just like, on the phone, and she just needed to just like, get all this stuff out of her. And that is not me. She's a fire. And that is not me. And so I even before I knew anything about the elements, when I was self-describing things I would go through, and I had very little self-awareness, but the self-awareness I had, I would always say, I don't want to talk about it until I've been through it. Like, I never wanted to talk in the middle of the situation, ever. I wasn't, because it was like it's like the ooey gooey wound, like when my wound is ooey and gooey and like, I don't want to talk about it. When it's a scar and I've kind of gleaned everything that I can, and it's not an open at-risk wound anymore, and I'm on the other side of it, then I want to talk about it. And I've always been like that. I figured this out about myself young, that I didn't want to talk about it till I was through it and had learned what I had to learn. And so I do think there is something, to your point, to me talking to somebody in the middle.
Yeah.
And it actually felt good. It felt not alone.
Did it feel like it helped you navigate how you could take the next steps? Because you weren't so alone, you'd shared. So somebody might have, even just holding your hand or listening on the phone could be enough that could help you guide that ship a little bit closer to shore, to your true north, to get back to your grounding. And my metaphors are all whacked out here right now. But do you know what I mean? Like, did it help? Did it do something different? Because it was different for you.
Yeah. I think it helped me sleep.
Mm-hmm.
I really do. I think that, it's we can talk about throat chakra or whatever, just like verbalizing it. Like, in a way, we talk about it both ways with our throat and our words. It gives power to something, right? Like, when you use your vocal cords and your throat chakra and your words, you are giving power to something sometimes you don't want to give power to. But sometimes it's like a release, and like the power that's coming, it's like bringing it out of your body, right, and into somebody else who was there for me, and so it makes you feel closer to the people that you share with, that you have someone to make you feel not alone.
Yeah. Beautiful. That's beautiful. I have so many thoughts in my mind of different ways that we could go from here. I don't know if this is appropriate. At some point, I feel like I would love to talk about some of the climate solutions that are out there in the world, because I know when things like this happen, um, I go to, how do we fix it? How do we change it? How do we stop this from happening? And so I think, there's a lot of really good work going on in the world with solutions. If the people in charge would just allow change to happen, and so that we could, transform our world into the world that we could all survive in. At some point, it's really going to become about survival. And for those people that are in the paths of these storms and these wildfires and these flood, like, it is about survival. And so at some point, I think it really, the conversation has to stop being, can we financially afford to do these changes? If we change how we do agriculture, which is a huge way of sequestering carbon and changing the dynamic of the storm cycles, well, we can't afford to do that. At what point do we say we can't afford not to do that? And I don't mean to go political. At some point, Blaine, hopefully you and I will run the world, and we'll put some of these things into play that will really help things. But until then, what we do is the yogic tenet of work on yourself and you're working on the world. Change yourself, you're changing the world. And that really is a real thing. That's not like a weak substitute, because, we might not feel like we have this sort of global power that we would like to just take the magic wand and boop, there we go. We've changed the ocean temperatures. But so we're working on ourselves, and here we are, here you are, the days leading up to this, going through it, and now post. and you're about to go down there and you're about to now face to face with the destruction that occurred in your home, in your community, in the whole state, and with your family, all of that. You're about to go down there. And so, what I'd like to know from you, because you've said a couple of times you're so glad you're a yogi going through these because now you have tools. So, I want to talk about some tools because there's a lot of people that are facing similar things and have in the past and will in the future. And one of the things we share a lot, and I share, I'm going to share it again right now, because to me, this is like my number one. If I'm feeling stressed, this is what I'm going to do, and it's going to help me instantaneously. And while this was all going on, and I was talking to you, often I was on the phone with you, and I was doing this, you didn't know, you probably knew, but you didn't know. I have one hand over my forehead, and that helps to keep the blood in the forebrain so that I can think intelligently and creatively. And it has been, since I learned this from our teacher, Donna Eden, years ago, it has been like my number one tool that I use in a stressful situation. But I also want to acknowledge that the stress that I was feeling around this storm cycles, these two storm cycles, was nowhere near the level of stress that you were feeling. And so these tools that we have are incredibly powerful and valuable. And they're also on a spectrum in terms of how long some of them take to work and what tools are the best for really high level intense situations. And so I'm just sharing that this is one that you can do anytime, anywhere, and it's going to help the stress, even as you're walking into this house with, it could be 10 feet of wet sand in your living room. Holding your hand over your forehead is going to help you to be able to take in the situation and be calm while you're doing it and not just go right into stress, fight or flight response. And I want to know what you've been doing as the stress loads are definitely higher in your world right now. What are you doing to support yourself energetically and therefore emotionally?
I learned how to say it this way from you, Lauren, that sometimes you have to meet the energy at the intensity upon which it is. Right. And so sometimes when you have a very highly intense, energetic response that isn't more of the like, oh, my nervous system is taking a hit right now, kind of things like nervous systems do, then you get more aggressive. It's a more aggressive takedown of your system. And so you can, it's like meeting fire with fire. And, I will say the first time I ever did this was during COVID because my studio, the government and where I live in the Boulder, Colorado area, we had a lot of government shutdowns. I know other parts of the country, I think they had yoga, maybe Florida, just like their yoga studios never closed. Well, it was not like that in Boulder, Colorado. So the government, shut down the studio. And it was, at first it's like 2 or 3 weeks, and it ended up being for months. And then we were allowed to open at 50% capacity, which, was a really weird time. And I was just kind of pulling it all back together. And then I found out the government was shutting it down again. And because of the rates of, the COVID hospitalizations. And I just remember I was by myself in my yoga studio when I got that news. And I have a stereo system in my yoga studio. And I just like cranked up this really loud, like dance music and started just like dancing by myself. I was the only one in the thing, just like jumping around and dancing and making noises and like shaking. And I was just like, because it was just so, I have rent. I just had so much, And so that's the first time I really consciously was like, I couldn't walk out, onto Main Street in my town and cause a scene yelling or something, And so I just went to town with loud music until I just was like exhausted. And so that's really the theme. Sometimes it could be screaming into your pillow or punching the pillow or like yelling at the trees or running or something that's physically hard, that is literally going to make you physically exhausted. And the two organ systems associated with metal our lung and large intestine. And so to talk about lung here, lung is this big, letting go, release. I mean, we also let go with our large intestines, but a way that we let go is with our lungs, with our exhales, with our words, with our hard breath, with our singing, with our humming, with, all these sorts of ways. And so just working the lungs, like running, jumping, punching, dancing, like whatever, and just really getting your lungs like expanding and contracting and expanding and contracting and breathing hard and maybe breaking a sweat and just, diffusing that intense energy with intensity. I think there's a time for that. And I just experienced it.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously I agree with that 100%. And I don't know if we really talk enough about what that means, fighting fire with fire. It's like when there is a fire, oftentimes the fire crew will go and light another fire to run towards the fire so that the fire meets the set fire meets the out of control fire, and then there's nothing else to burn. And you've created a zone around that where there's no more fuel for the fire. So the fire has met itself. It's like I've seen you in the mirror, and now we can both just mellow out and calm down. And so what you brought up about that intensity, and I also want to put a little pin into that yelling to the trees. That's something that I learned when I was studying with Tom Brown Jr., who just incidentally passed away not that long ago. Was quite stunned to hear that. Sort of never think that your teachers or your mentors aren't going to be there anymore. And I remember being with him on retreat and getting that directive and going out to the trees and talking, singing, yelling, holding space, that the tree is breathing out what you need to breathe in, and you are breathing out what the tree needs to breathe in. And the tree is grounded so deeply, teaching you how you can be grounded while at the very top flowing with the wind. And so it's this really beautiful dynamic of being in the presence of, I want to say it, another being that can hold really intense space with you and for you. It's sort of like flinging yourself down onto the ground and just crying and crying and crying and recognizing that the earth can hold that and is not going to be put off by the intensity of you. And so I think that's a really beautiful thing to bring up, especially when we feel so hyper dysregulated that we just don't even know what to do with it, that the natural world around us can be a source of balm for us. And then, of course, cranking up the music and dancing in your living room. I mean, there's really nothing that's gonna, like, that's magical. That's transformative. That's really powerful. And so that when you have these really intense emotional experiences, you can meet them with the same kind of intensity and diffuse them instead of feeling like you just are going on and spinning out. You don't want to spin out. You want to kind of unwind it, which is a really bit of a different thing.
Yeah. So that's my advice. I mean, not everybody's going to be a runner, but, everybody can like shake and yell and punch and that sort of thing too, to just meet fire with fire.
Make sure you punch something that's soft and that's not also alive.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Not another
person or an animal or even a tree. I don't recommend punching.
No,
trees.
your mattress.
Something soft. Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah. I just had to say that. Okay. So you're going to be down in Florida really soon. And I'm just wondering if you were telling a friend, a student that was preparing to do this journey, what advice would you give? And so therefore, what advice are you giving yourself to prepare yourself to, you already know some of the damage, you're not showing up to your cushy little, lovely little place. You're showing up to some destruction. So how are you preparing for that? And what are your plans for when you get on the ground?
My first plan is to just get all the information that I can because we don't know everything yet. And I think, to get myself more out of the unknown and into the known, I think that we have enough information that we know we'll have a lot of work ahead of us. And so that, that I already know. So I'm already in the mindset of the first, couple months are not going to be relaxing in any way. Like I'll be doing, when I'm not working, I'll be doing a lot of construction. I'm honestly more worried about my reactions to the things off my property, what's happened to my community, what's happened to the restaurants that I used to like to go and visit, and the beaches and the wildlife and the barrier islands that I like to go to. And it's going to be, I really think I'm going to take in a lot more than happen. I have a property line, right? And so I feel like I have a good handle on my property line and what it's going to take, but like everything that's outside of my property line, I think is going to be really emotional, partially because of the letting go of what it used to be and what I used to enjoy about it. It'll either not, it'll be years before it could return to that kind of reality, if ever. And then the people, the places, what everybody else is going through. And so then, to be honest, we haven't done 5-element flow here, but I think I'm going to go through fear, anger, anxiety, worry, grief. I think I'm going to be going through all of those. And so I hate to say something on the podcast that we haven't gone over before, but we have different motions and sounds that we do for each of those elements to help transmute. And ultimately, we want balance between those elements. And balance isn't 2020, 2020, 20, but just in the reality of the situation that you're in, balanced imbalance, right? I mean, just so that you are, and they're always shifting and they're always moving. And so my plan is really to feel into the 5-element flow, because I think that all of those emotions are going to have different like highs and lows, like sequentially based on what I'm in.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. And maybe, I think that would be fun stuff to unpack over in future podcasts, but maybe we can put in the show notes if anyone really needs some support right now with the 5 elements. We do have a little class that's super easy that I lead that teaches you what these elements are and exactly what Blaine was saying, the poses and the sounds to support you, because I feel like you and all of those affected by these storms are going to need that courage, assertiveness, inspiration, self-love, and that ability to let go and have faith that, like you said, that something good will come of this. And I think this is really important for all of us, because the only constant is change. And so no matter what we're going through in our lives, it's sort of funny. It's diametrically opposed because we're creatures of habit, right? These are these like sayings that, but we're creatures of habits. We don't like change. And yet that is the only thing that really happens all the time, constantly. That's, again, not saying the only constant is change. And so how do we regulate ourselves? And we talk about that a lot in EM yoga, regulating the nervous system in the face of these two oppositional ideas that we don't like to change, but all there is change. It's just like, wow, somebody created that really, either with a little bit of a or just like, good luck, everybody. And so I love that we do have some of these tools to be able to navigate these oppositional ideas that are the really truth underlying of our existence. So I just want to say thank you for sharing and being really vulnerable with us, because I think it allows us to be vulnerable too. And especially for those people that are having to keep it all together. And I get that. And there has to be a place for you to be able to kind of break down and flush it away, speaking of large intestine, and then keeping it together again. Because if you're only always keeping it together, if you're always gripping on and you're never letting go, you are not moving with the pulse of life, which is a constant. It is a constant holding on and letting go and holding on and letting go and holding on and letting go. And so for those of you that right now feel like you've got to keep it all together, I hope that you can find a friend or somebody, somebody in your church or temple, or that you can reach out to in your community, an elder, a leader, a child, somebody that you could share with, like Blaine shared with, so that you can release a little bit of that you have to keep it all together, so that when you are confronted with the 10 feet of wet sand in your living room or the 10 feet of wet sand in your emotional living room, you have then the reserves to do that. And so I'm hoping for that fortitude for all of you in North Carolina and all of you in Florida and all of you all over the country and all over the world that are still digging out from disasters that are 2 or 3 or 10 news cycles ago, but you are still rebuilding your heart, your home, your communities. This is going on all over the world, and we really do need the strength and resilience and the acknowledgement that we are all together so that we can find that support in the ocean and not just feel like we're alone in the drop.
Yeah. Thank you, Lauren. I'm glad. I think it was therapeutic for me to do this podcast. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing, and thank you all for tuning in. And our blessings go out to all of you.
Alrighty, Energy fans, that's a wrap on another positively charged episode of Energy Works. Lauren, this is the part where we get to use our energy puns.
It's been electrifying, hasn't it, Blaine? We hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have.
If you're feeling amped up and you want to keep your energy flowing, be sure to hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform.
And we'd love to hear from you. So please take a moment to leave us a review. Your feedback helps us continue to deliver content that resonates. So light up our inbox.
And spark a conversation with your friends to tell them about us. And we'll see you next time on Energy Works.